The massive bridge of the U.S. Thunderchild hummed with tension. Captain James Walker stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his weathered face reflecting off the reinforced viewscreen. Before him loomed the impossible, the Galactic Council's fortress, a structure so vast it dwarfed even the largest space stations humanity had ever built. "Status report," Walker said, his voice steady despite the weight of 7 billion hopes resting on his shoulders. "All systems at 98%, Captain," replied First Officer Thomas from his station. "Shield harmonics are stable, and the quantum drive is purring like a kitten." Walker allowed himself a small smile. The Thunderchild represented everything humanity could achieve when pushed into a corner. 3 miles of hardened steel and advanced technology, built in secret beneath the red sands of Mars. The Council had spent centuries telling humans they weren't ready for advanced technology, that they were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous to join galactic civilization. The fortress ahead of them proved the Council's hypocrisy. Its weapon systems could devastate entire planets. Its shields had repelled every species that had ever dared to challenge the Council's authority. It was a monument to power, designed to inspire fear and enforce obedience. "Engineering reports the absorption arrays are charged and ready," announced Chief Engineer Wilson through the intercom. "Whatever they throw at us, we can take it and throw it right back." Walker nodded, remembering the countless nights the engineering teams had spent perfecting the energy absorption technology. It was humanity's answer to being outgunned. If they couldn't match the Council's firepower, they would turn it against them. "Message from the fortress, Captain," reported Communications Officer Lisa Brown, her fingers dancing across her console. "They're ordering us to turn back immediately or face destruction. Standard Council protocol." "Put it on screen," Walker ordered. The image of High Commander Reed appeared, his elongated features twisted in what passed for a smile in his species. "Captain Walker, I must admit, we're somewhat impressed. We didn't think humans capable of building something this sophisticated. Turn your vessel around now, and we might even revise our opinion of your species in a century or two." Walker stepped forward, his boots clicking against the polished floor. "I'm afraid we're done waiting for your approval, Commander. Humanity has suffered under your sanctions long enough. We're here to negotiate new terms." Reed's smile widened. "Negotiate? With one ship? I count 50 defense vessels between you and this fortress. Each one carries enough firepower to reduce your vessel to atoms. What could you possibly hope to achieve?" "Something you should have learned about humans by now, Commander," Walker replied. "We achieve the impossible when everyone tells us we can't." He signaled Brown to cut the transmission. The bridge crew watched as the defense fleet began to move, forming an attack pattern they had probably used successfully 100 times before. "They're launching fighters," reported Tactical Officer Jones. "Standard Council swarm formation." Walker took his command chair, feeling the subtle vibration of the Thunderchild's massive engines through the deck. "Deploy countermeasures. Let's show them why they should have let us join their little club centuries ago." The first wave of Council fighters approached, their energy weapons charging. They expected to face a primitive human vessel, something they could overwhelm with superior numbers and technology. They didn't know that every shot they fired would only make the Thunderchild stronger. "Shields at maximum," Thomas announced. "Energy absorption arrays online." Walker leaned forward in his chair. "All hands, battle stations, remember your training. Remember Earth. Remember every time they looked down on us, every sanction they imposed, every time they called us barbaric while they hid behind their fortress." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Today, we proved them wrong." The first energy blasts from the Council fighters streaked toward the Thunderchild. Instead of impacting against standard shields, they seemed to be pulled into the ship's hull, feeding the absorption arrays that had been humanity's closest guarded secret. "Energy levels rising," Wilson reported from engineering. "Arrays functioning perfectly, Captain. We're at 110% capacity and climbing." Walker's expression hardened. Then it's time to return their hospitality. Tactical. Target the nearest fighter squadron. Show them what happens when humans decide to push back. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin, and Captain James Walker intended to make it one the Galactic Council would never forget. 6 months earlier, Walker had stood in a very different room. The underground facility on Mars was cold and dimly lit, but it held humanity's greatest secret. Through the reinforced glass window, he watched hundreds of workers swarm around the massive shape of the incomplete Thunderchild. The Council's latest sanctions just shut down our last trade route to the Centauri colonies, said Admiral Rogers, his face looking older than his 60 years. He handed Walker a data tablet showing the grim numbers. 2 million colonists are now cut off from Earth's supply lines. Walker scrolled through the report, his jaw tightening. Their excuse this time: the same as always. They claim we're too aggressive, too unstable. Rogers laughed without humor. Funny how they call us aggressive, while they slowly choke the life out of our economy. The two men watched as a massive piece of hull plating was lifted into place by robotic arms. The quantum phase armor was their newest breakthrough, reverse-engineered from scattered pieces of alien technology. The Council would have been furious to know humans had managed to not only understand it but improve upon it. How much longer? Walker asked. 3 months until she's ready for her first test flight. The shield absorption system is the trickiest part. We've never tried to build anything like it before. Rogers turned to face Walker directly. The Council's sensors sweep Mars every 48 hours. We're betting everything on their arrogance. They'd never scan deep enough because they don't believe we could build anything worth hiding. Walker remembered the day, 15 years ago, when the Council had first rejected Earth's application to join the galactic community. He had been a young lieutenant then, watching the broadcast with the rest of his crew. The Council representatives had spent 3 hours listing all of humanity's flaws, explaining why they were too dangerous to trust with advanced technology. "Sir," a young engineer interrupted their conversation, looking nervous but excited. "We've just finished the preliminary tests on the AI core. Well, you need to see this." They followed her to a nearby control room where dozens of screens displayed combat simulations. The Thunderchild's AI was running battle scenarios, learning and adapting with each iteration. It moved in ways no human or alien pilot would expect, using strategies that seemed impossible until you saw them work. "It's breaking every rule of space combat," the engineer explained. "The Council's ships fight like it's a game of chess. Logical, predictable. Our AI fights like it's playing jazz. It improvises, adapts, does things that don't make sense until suddenly they do." Walker watched as the simulated Thunderchild took on an entire fleet of Council vessels. It didn't try to overpower them. Instead, it turned their own tactics against them, using their formations and attack patterns to create chaos in their ranks. "How did you program this?" Rogers asked. The engineer smiled. "We didn't, not really. We fed it every space battle in human history, every strategy game ever created, every martial art ever developed. Then we let it learn. The Council thinks in straight lines. We taught our AI to think like humans, to be unpredictable, creative, and most importantly, to never give up." Walker remembered standing on that same spot for hours, watching simulation after simulation. Each time the AI found new ways to fight, new ways to survive. It wasn't just programming. It was humanity's spirit translated into mathematics and quantum algorithms. Back in his quarters that night, Walker had recorded a message for his daughter on Earth. "The Council thinks they know us," he had said. "They've spent centuries studying humanity, looking for all our flaws. But they missed something important. Every time they push us down, we don't just get back up. We come back stronger. They think they're containing a threat. What they're really doing is forcing us to become something they never imagined possible." Now, 6 months later, standing on the Thunderchild's bridge, Walker knew every moment of preparation had been worth it. The Council had spent centuries building their fortress, thinking it made them untouchable. They were about to learn that nothing was untouchable to a species that had spent its entire history doing the impossible. "Captain," Thomas's voice brought Walker back to the present. "The Council's first wave is almost in range." Walker straightened his uniform. The weight of history was about to meet humanity's determination to forge its own future. Then let's make our ancestors proud. The first shots from the Council fighters splashed against the Thunderchild's shields in brilliant bursts of light. Inside engineering, Chief Wilson watched the energy readings with fierce pride. Each impact sent power surging through the absorption arrays, feeding the ship's growing reservoir of energy. "Look at these readings," he said to his engineering team. "They have no idea they're just charging our batteries." The Thunderchild was unlike any vessel ever built. Where Council ships stood tall and elegant, humanity's masterpiece was sleek and dark, built for function over beauty. Its hull, 3 feet thick in places, contained layers of technology that most Council species believed impossible for humans to create. Wilson moved between monitoring stations, checking systems that had existed only in theory 6 months ago. The quantum phase armor drew the most power, its experimental circuits allowing sections of the hull to briefly slip between dimensions when under attack. Direct hits simply passed through empty space where solid hull had been microseconds before. "Port arrays at 120% capacity," reported Engineer Adams, her fingers flying over control panels. "The Council ships are increasing power to their main weapons." Wilson smiled. "Let them. Transfer the excess energy to the shield harmonics. Time to show them what this ship can really do." On the bridge, Walker watched the tactical display as the Council fleet adjusted their formation. They had expected the human ship to be destroyed in their first volley. Now they were regrouping, preparing a more concentrated attack. "Captain," Thomas called out, "engineering reports shield strength is actually increasing under their fire. The absorption technology is working better than we hoped." Walker nodded. "Send the energy readings to tactical. Jones, prepare a demonstration." The Thunderchild's most powerful weapon wasn't its guns or missiles. It was the ship itself, a perfect fusion of stolen alien science and human innovation. Where Council ships specialized in one type of combat, the Thunderchild was built to adapt. Its AI core could analyze enemy tactics and adjust faster than any organic crew. "Multiple enemy cruisers moving to surround us," Jones reported from tactical. "They're charging their heavy weapons." "Activate the ghost projectors," Walker ordered. "Let's add some chaos to their perfect formation." The quantum ghost projectors were perhaps the most ambitious of the ship's systems. Based on principles of quantum entanglement, they created perfect energy duplicates of the Thunderchild. These phantoms couldn't fire weapons, but they could confuse enemy targeting systems and draw fire away from the real ship. Throughout the vessel, crews worked with practiced precision. In the medical bay, Dr. Evans prepared for casualties, surrounded by medical technology that combined Earth's best healing techniques with reversed-engineered alien medicine. In the reactor room, technicians monitored the antimatter core, its stable containment field another testament to human determination. "Sir," Brown called from communications, "we're picking up confused chatter from the Council ships. Their commanders can't agree on which Thunderchild is real." Walker allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The Council had always underestimated human creativity. They saw technology as something to be slowly mastered over centuries. Humans saw it as a puzzle to be solved, a barrier to be broken. "Hull integrity at 98%, Thomas reported. "Minor damage to outer armor layers, but the phase shift systems are compensating. We've taken hits that would have destroyed any other ship our size." The Thunderchild shuddered as a particularly heavy blast struck its starboard side. Instead of punching through the hull, the energy was absorbed and redirected, feeding the ship's growing power reserves. "Energy banks approaching maximum capacity." Wilson's voice came through the intercom. "Whatever you're planning, Captain, now would be a good time." Walker studied the tactical display. The Council ships were still trying to target the real Thunderchild among its quantum duplicates. Their formation had holes in it, holes that wouldn't exist if they weren't so confused. "Plot a course through their line," Walker ordered. "It's time to show them why humanity has survived every challenge we've ever faced." The ship's AI calculated the optimal path in microseconds, factoring in enemy positions, weapon ranges, and the complex dance of quantum ghosts. The Thunderchild's engines hummed louder, preparing for the next phase of the battle. "All hands," Walker announced shipwide. "Prepare for high-speed maneuvers. Today we prove that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our refusal to accept limitations others place on us. The impossible ship, built by the species that should never have been able to build it, prepared to show the galaxy why underestimating humanity was the Council's greatest mistake." The space between the Thunderchild and the Council fleet lit up with weapons fire. Energy beams in multiple colors crisscrossed the void, creating a deadly light show. Walker watched as his ship's quantum ghosts danced through the enemy formation, each one a perfect copy of the Thunderchild. "Enemy commanders are arguing on open channels," Brown reported from her communication station, trying to hide a smile. "The admiral of their third fleet is insisting they're firing at the real ship, while their second fleet commander says he's found us." "They're both wrong," Jones added from tactical. "Thanks to the ghost projectors, we're actually 3 kilometers beneath where they're concentrating their fire." The Council fleet's perfect formation was breaking down. Their ships, used to fighting in precise, coordinated patterns, were now chasing shadows. Some vessels nearly collided as they tried to pursue different ghost images of the Thunderchild. "Status of the energy banks?" Walker asked. "Almost overflowing, sir," Thomas replied. "Their attacks have given us more power than we can safely store. Engineering recommends we use it soon." Walker nodded. The Council had always fought their battles the same way, overwhelming force applied with mathematical precision. But they had never faced an enemy that could turn their own energy weapons against them. "Multiple Council cruisers breaking formation," Jones announced. "They're trying to establish a wider search pattern." "Launch countermeasures," Walker ordered. "Let's add to their confusion." Small pods ejected from the Thunderchild's hull, each one containing a miniature version of the ghost projector technology. As they spread out, they created dozens of smaller phantom images, scout ships, fighters, and even what appeared to be debris from battle damage. "Council fleet is responding to the new contacts," Jones reported. "Their formation is now completely broken. I'm detecting power fluctuations in their weapons. They're not sure where to shoot anymore." In the engineering section, Wilson watched the power readings with growing excitement. "They've given us enough energy to power a small colony," he reported through the intercom. "Permission to show them what we can do with it." "Permission granted," Walker replied. "Target their command ship. Let's give them something real to worry about." The Thunderchild's main weapon wasn't a traditional gun or energy beam. Instead, it was a focused burst of the same energy the Council ships had been firing at them. But now it was compressed, enhanced, and redirected with devastating effect. "Targeting solution ready," Jones announced. "Their command ship shields are oriented toward 3 of our ghost images. Their rear quadrant is exposed." Walker stood from his command chair. "Fire." The burst of energy that erupted from the Thunderchild was blinding. It struck the Council command ship's exposed shields like a hammer, overwhelming them instantly. The massive vessel's rear section erupted in a cascade of secondary explosions. "Direct hit," Jones called out. "Enemy command ship has lost power to their main engines. They're running on emergency systems only." The Council fleet's response was immediate but chaotic. Some ships rushed to protect their wounded command vessel, while others turned to fire on where they thought the attack had come from. None of them were looking in the right direction. "We're receiving new transmissions," Brown reported. "Multiple Council ships are requesting coordinates of our actual position. Their sensor systems are completely confused by the ghost images." Walker allowed himself a small smile. "Send them our regards, but not our location." Time for Phase 2. The Thunderchild's engines flared to life, pushing the ship through a gap in the Council's scattered formation. Their original attack plan, so carefully coordinated, had fallen apart in less than 15 minutes of combat. Message from Admiral Reed's flagship, Brown announced. He's ordering all ships to fire in every direction where they detect a Thunderchild signature. That's going to be interesting, Thomas commented. They'll be hitting each other more than they hit us. Walker watched as the Council fleet began their desperate barrage. Energy weapons fired in all directions, some passing harmlessly through ghost images, others striking friendly ships whose shields were oriented the wrong way. All hands, Walker announced shipwide. Prepare for close-quarters maneuvering. The Council is about to learn that quantity of firepower means nothing without the wisdom to use it properly. The Thunderchild moved forward, its quantum ghosts moving with it, leading humanity's first real strike against the power that had held them back for so long. The real battle was just beginning, and the Council's worst nightmare was coming true. They were losing to the very species they had dismissed as unworthy. Chaos reigned in space as the Council fleet continued their desperate attempt to hit the real Thunderchild. Their ships, once arranged in perfect formation, now scattered like leaves in a storm. Energy beams crossed paths, occasionally hitting their own vessels as the quantum ghost images led them into firing on each other. Council ships report 15% damage to their own fleet from friendly fire, Brown announced, her voice carrying a hint of disbelief. They're still trying to coordinate their attacks, but nobody trusts their sensor readings anymore. Walker studied the tactical display. The Council's defensive line had gaps now, gaps that wouldn't have existed if they hadn't panicked. Time to show them what else we can do. Engineering, activate the phase drive. Phase drive powering up, Wilson responded from engineering. Remember, sir, we can only maintain full phase for 30 seconds before the power drain becomes critical. The phase drive was perhaps humanity's greatest achievement, a system that could briefly shift the entire ship slightly out of normal space. For a few precious seconds, the Thunderchild would become almost ghost-like itself, able to pass through solid matter. Multiple Council ships attempting to form a blockade ahead, Jones reported. They're positioning themselves 3 layers deep. Perfect, Walker said. They're bunching up exactly where we want them. All hands, braced for phase transition in 10 seconds. The Thunderchild's hull began to shimmer, taking on an almost transparent quality. The quantum ghosts continued their dance around the Council fleet, keeping them distracted from the real threat. Phase drive at maximum, Wilson called out. 30 seconds starting now. Take us through their line, Walker ordered. Right through their biggest ships. The sight was incredible. The Thunderchild passed directly through 3 Council battleships, as if they were made of smoke. Crew members on both sides could see each other through their viewports for brief moments as the ships occupied the same space. The Council crew's faces showed pure shock. This violated everything they thought they knew about physics. 20 seconds of phase remaining. Thomas counted down. The Council fleet erupted in confusion. Their carefully planned defense had just been rendered meaningless by technology they had deemed impossible for humans to develop. Some ships began firing wildly, their beams passing harmlessly through the phased Thunderchild. Council command channels are in complete disarray, Brown reported, listening to their communications. Some captains are demanding to surrender. Others are calling this dark magic. 10 seconds of phase, Thomas warned. Walker allowed himself a grim smile. Let's give them something else to worry about. Tactical, prepare to release our stored energy the moment we emerge from phase. The Thunderchild continued its ghost-like passage through the Council fleet. Behind it, ships scrambled to reorient themselves, but their formation was beyond repair. Decades of relying on the same tactics had left them unable to adapt to something this unexpected. Phase ending in 3, 2, 1. Phase drive disengaged. The moment the Thunderchild became solid again, Jones activated the energy release. All the power absorbed from the Council's attacks burst out in a spherical wave of pure energy. Ships caught in the blast saw their shields flicker and fail, their systems overloading from the massive power surge. Direct hits on 23 Council vessels, Jones reported. Their shields are down, and main power is offline. The rest are falling back to defensive positions around the fortress. On the main screen, Walker could see the Council's mighty fortress growing larger. Their fleet, which had seemed so overwhelming just an hour ago, was now scattered and broken. Half their ships were either disabled or too damaged to fight effectively. Message from High Administrator Reed, Brown announced. He's demanding to know how we achieve phase transition technology. He says it's beyond human capabilities. No response needed, Walker replied. They'd spent centuries telling us what humans can't do. I think we've made our point about their limitations, not ours. The Thunderchild pushed forward, its quantum ghosts still confusing what remained of the Council's sensors. The fortress ahead began powering up its main weapons, but Walker wasn't concerned. They had proven that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their ability to achieve the impossible when everyone said they couldn't. Take us in, he ordered. The Council's about to learn that their fortress isn't as impregnable as they thought. Not when they're facing a species that spent its entire history breaking through barriers. The fortress loomed ahead, its weapon ports glowing with building energy. But for the first time in its history, the structure's defenders weren't confident of victory. They had just watched their unbeatable fleet be systematically dismantled by a single human ship, and now that ship was coming for them. The Council's fortress filled the Thunderchild's view-screen, its massive structure blocking out the stars behind it. Built over 3 centuries ago, it had never been successfully attacked. Its walls, hundreds of meters thick, contained enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. Their main weapon is powering up, Jones reported from Tactical, his voice tense. Energy readings are off the scale. This is what they use to destroy planets. Sir. In his command center at the heart of the fortress, High Administrator Reed watched the approaching human vessel with a mixture of rage and disbelief. Centuries of Council dominance were being challenged by a species they had dismissed as primitive. All fortress batteries, open fire, Reed commanded. Use everything we have. The fortress responded with a display of firepower that would have annihilated any normal ship. Thousands of energy beams and plasma torpedoes lit up space, all converging on the Thunderchild's position. Multiple impacts incoming, Thomas warned. Absorption arrays are at maximum capacity already. We can't take much more. Walker gripped his command chair. Engineering. Route all power to the phase drive. We're going to try something they'll never expect. Sir, Wilson's voice came through the intercom. If we phase shift with this much absorbed energy, it could overload our systems. We've never tested it under these conditions. No choice, Walker replied. This is what humans do. We adapt or we die. Activate phase drive on my mark. The fortress's barrage was seconds from impact. On its command deck, Reed watched with satisfaction. No ship could survive this much concentrated firepower. Even with their impressive technology, the humans had finally overreached. Phase drive ready, Wilson reported. But sir, we can only maintain it for 15 seconds at most with this power load. That's all we need, Walker said. All hands, brace for emergency maneuvers. Phase drive activate. Now. The Thunderchild shifted just as the fortress's weapons struck. Instead of destroying the ship, the massive energy barrage passed through it, continuing on to strike the fortress itself. Reed watched in horror as his own weapons impacted against the fortress's shields. Impossible, he shouted. No species has ever managed to phase shift an entire vessel. The Thunderchild pushed forward, its hull flickering between solid and ghost-like states. The fortress's defenses, designed to stop physical attacks, were useless against a ship that could simply pass through them. 10 seconds of phase remaining. Thomas counted down. Hull integrity is fluctuating. The power load is straining our systems. Inside the ship, Circuits sparked and power conduits groaned under the strain. The combination of absorbed energy and phase shift technology was pushing the Thunderchild beyond its designed limits. 7 seconds to critical failure. Wilson mourned from engineering. "We need to release this energy now, sir." Walker watched as they approached the fortress's main reactor section. "Stay on course. Wait for my command." The fortress's internal defenses activated, filling corridors with energy fields and deploying automated defense systems. But they were designed to stop boarding parties, not an entire battleship passing through their walls. 5 seconds. Thomas continued the countdown. On the fortress's command deck, Reed was frantically ordering evacuations. For the first time in Council history, their ultimate stronghold was vulnerable. 3 seconds. "Almost there," Walker said, watching their position carefully. "Stand by to disengage phase drive and release all absorbed energy on my mark." 2 seconds. The Thunderchild's ghostly form had penetrated deep into the fortress's structure. They were now positioned near its central power core, the heart of the massive station. 1 second. "Now," Walker commanded. "Disengage phase drive and release everything." The Thunderchild snapped back into normal space inside the fortress's central chamber. The instant they became solid, all the absorbed energy from the fortress's own weapons was released in a massive burst. The blast struck the fortress's power core directly, creating a cascade of overloads through its systems. Direct hit to their main reactor. Jones called out. "Their power grid is collapsing." Throughout the massive structure, lights flickered and systems failed. The mighty fortress, symbol of Council authority for centuries, had been mortally wounded by its own weaponry, turned against it by human ingenuity. "Get us out of here," Walker ordered, "before the reactor goes critical." The Thunderchild's engines flared as they pushed away from the dying fortress. Behind them, explosions began chain-reacting through the structure that had once been considered indestructible. High Administrator Reed stared at his failing command console, finally understanding the Council's fatal mistake. They had spent so long telling humans what they couldn't do, they never considered what humans would do to prove them wrong. The dying fortress lit up space behind the Thunderchild like an artificial sun. Chain reactions of explosions rippled through its massive structure, each blast revealing the scale of what humanity had just achieved. But Captain Walker wasn't finished yet. "Communications, broadcast on all Council frequencies," he ordered. "Let everyone see what happened here today." Brown's fingers moved across her console. "Channel open, sir. We're broadcasting to every Council world and colony in range." Walker stood from his command chair, his voice steady despite the exhaustion of battle. "This is Captain James Walker of the Earth ship Thunderchild. You've just witnessed the fall of a fortress that was meant to be eternal. But we didn't come here for destruction. We came here for change." On thousands of worlds, members of countless species gathered around communication screens. Many had suffered under the Council's strict rules and regulations, watching their own development restricted just as humanity's had been. "Your Council claimed humanity was too aggressive, too unpredictable to join galactic society," Walker continued. "They built this fortress as a symbol of their power, a warning to anyone who would challenge their authority. But they made a crucial mistake. They thought keeping us isolated would keep us weak." The Thunderchild's sensors showed escape pods launching from the crumbling fortress. Among them was High Administrator Reed's personal vessel. "Escape pod requesting emergency docking," Thomas reported. "It's Reed himself, sir." "Granted," Walker replied, surprising his crew. "Show them the difference between their kind of power and ours." As the fortress continued to break apart behind them, Walker resumed his broadcast. "To every species watching this, remember this moment. The Council didn't fail because their technology was inferior. They failed because they forgot that true strength isn't about having the biggest weapons or the strongest shields. It's about the determination to overcome any obstacle, the creativity to solve impossible problems, and the wisdom to know when to show mercy." The escape pod docked, and security teams escorted High Administrator Reed to the bridge. He entered to find not a conquering warrior, but a calm human captain waiting to talk. "You could have destroyed us all," Reed said, his voice carrying a note of confusion. "Why didn't you?" "Because that's exactly what you expected us to do," Walker replied. "You spent centuries telling everyone that humans were too violent, too unpredictable to be trusted. It's time to prove you wrong about that too." Brown's console lit up with incoming transmissions. "Sir, we're receiving messages from dozens of worlds. Other species. They're declaring their independence from Council authority. They're asking for Earth's support." Walker turned to Reed. "Your fortress wasn't just keeping humanity contained. It was holding back every species that showed too much independence, too much creativity. That ends today." Through the view screen, they watched the final collapse of the mighty fortress. But instead of a symbol of defeat, it had become a beacon of change. "We're offering you a choice," Walker told Reed. "Help us build something new. A true galactic community where every species is free to develop at their own pace, where innovation is encouraged rather than feared. Or cling to your old ways and watch as the galaxy moves forward without you." The bridge crew held their breath, watching this historic moment unfold. The Thunderchild, damaged but undefeated, had accomplished what no other ship had managed in centuries of Council rule. "Messages are still coming in," Brown reported, wonder in her voice. "Worlds that have been silent for centuries are speaking up. They're calling this the Dawn Revolution." Walker looked at Reed. "Your fortress was meant to be a prison for species like us. Instead, it became the key to everyone's freedom. That's the thing about humanity that your council never understood. We don't just break through barriers. We make sure nobody else has to face those barriers again." As the last pieces of the fortress drifted apart in space, a new era was beginning. The Thunderchild had come to challenge the Council's authority, but it had achieved something far greater. It had shown the galaxy that no power was truly unbeatable, no rule truly eternal, when faced with the combination of human determination and compassion. "Send word to Earth," Walker ordered. Tell them humanity just helped the galaxy remember how to dream again." The stars seemed brighter somehow, as if the universe itself was celebrating the fall of ancient restrictions and the birth of new possibilities. The impossible ship had done more than win a battle. It had changed the course of galactic history.